Okay, good afternoon. So today we want some practice on writing to a file, which is a skill that's particularly helpful in question 5 or question 6 in the paper 2 exam. And so we want lots of practice for this. Opening a file is easy. This sounds complicated, but it's really not that bad. It's just writing data to a file using file.write and then adding in extra commas between all the values. It looks complicated, but it's exceptionally useful. And then we need to remember to close the file later, otherwise you're not going to be able to use that file for anything useful. Why is it important to save data? Well, remember, there's 2 places you can store stuff. You can store it in your primary storage or you can store it in your secondary storage. Primary storage is RAM, as in your random access memory. And when you run a program in Python, that program and the variables are stored in RAM because RAM is fast. RAM is fast, but it's limited in capacity, as in it doesn't store as much as your secondary storage. But the big benefit of secondary storage, even though it's slow, isn't that it's big, although it is big. The big benefit is it's non-volatile. So non-volatile means that if you switch the power off and something is in your non-volatile storage, your secondary storage, it's still going to be there when you switch it back on. That's not the same as RAM. RAM is volatile, which means if you switch the power off and switch the power back on again, everything that was in RAM has now gone. So that's why saving to a file is so important. We've talked about 2 important characters, a line feed and a carriage return. Remember, line feed means going on to the next line, and carriage return is from the olden days of a typewriter, where you type, going across, and then the carriage, the thing that actually prints, goes back to the left-hand side, and the line feed is the thing that moves it down onto the next line. So on some operating systems, in a text file that goes from one line to the next, we'll use both a line feed and a carriage return. Sometimes they'll do them in a different order, sometimes they'll only have one of them. So there's a difference between the way Linux and Windows represents this. You don't need to worry about any of that. You just need to be able to spot this phrase that might come in an exam. They'll ask you to put in a line feed character, and you know that they're talking about a \n to move on to the next line. And there we go. We're going to put in our \n, our line feed this time. And we're going to do string concatenation. Again, it sounds complicated, but it's actually dead simple. It just means joining strings together. So far, we've mostly dealt with reading a file, so we open it in read mode with an R here. Today, we're going to use append mode. Yeah, so read means that you can't write to it, obviously. Write means as soon as you open it in write mode, everything that was there is wiped out, it's gone. You've got to replace it. Append means you're putting it onto the end. So let's make a start. You need to open up your CT28 Word document. You've got some code here to take a look at, and again, just like in question 5 and question 6, don't panic about all of this just yet. Just start at the top, read through the instructions, and we'll have a little look. So let's have a look at the instructions here. Again, you don't want to panic when you see a large file. Let's just have a scan through. We've got a constant for the name of the file, which we've got over here, so it looks like web browsers. Interestingly, they've finally switched off Internet Explorer. No security updates for it anymore. It's got a tiny market share, but Microsoft is retiring it. We've got a table, and we want to be able to write this data to that file. So there is a file there. I'm going to delete it now that you know what it's supposed to look like. The program is supposed to write it. So we've got some blank spaces where the comments are. Your job is to rearrange these into the right order. So my top tip is to use the keyboard shortcuts. Home goes to the beginning of the line. End goes to the end of the line. So shift and end will select it. Don't use your mouse, it's slow and clumsy. Arrow keys and shift, or arrow keys, shift and end. Next keyboard shortcut is Control X. It's so much better in this case than Control C, because if you find the one that's to do with opening a file, like this one, it has the word open in, and you copy it, Control C, and you paste it in here, well, you've got another copy of it down here, and I don't want that, because you get confused which ones you've done and which ones you haven't. So let's cut. Control X. If you make a little scissors shape with your fingers, it looks like an X. That's how I remember it anyway. Control X to cut, Control V to paste, find the one that looks the most likely, cut them and paste them into the right order. Be careful with your indentation. And remember, you can test it. Control and enter or press run. The beauty of the Edexcel on-screen test is you can test it. You should test it as you go. If you're watching at home, I recommend that you pause before watching this next bit. We've had about 10 minutes or so to have a go at it, but let's model the thought process and see how we could approach it. So let's have a look at the comments. Construct the column heading string and write it to the file. So that's going to be outline equals column headings, possibly. So I want to start off by having this one. There we go. What is column headings? Column headings is going to be browser, desktop, mobile, and tablet. That looks promising. When it says construct the, I want to kind of assign the value from lots of different concatenated strings joined together. So I've got the first one, column heading 0, that's browser. I want to get the second one, so that's index 1. Let's find it. So I've got browser 1 and column headings 1. Let's go for all of these. And if we put these all in the same order that they are, first of all, it's just going to have browser, comma, and then we're going to concatenate onto the end of it, desktop, comma, etc., etc., etc. So that looks promising so far. Right, a loop. Let's find a loop. We've got if, that's selection, not iteration. This looks like iteration to me. Control X, plop it in there. Need to make sure indentation's okay. It's inside the save data procedure or function, so it needs to be indented. It has a colon at the end, so the next line needs to be indented. So, pick up a record, construct the comma separated line. What does that mean? Well, I want to get a record from here, from browser table. So that looks like picking up a record. And then, what does it say? Construct the comma separated line. So maybe just all of that. It's nice that all of these are in the right order, but they do have to be indented because it's part of the while loop, which is good. Step 4, add the line feed to all of the lines except the last one in the file. All lines except the last need a \n. So we've got 2 of these. Control X. I'll put one there. And I'm going to need one there. Oh, and I didn't actually write it to the file yet. So I used that twice. I can get rid of that one. So I'd better write it to the file here after that. And write it to the file there. Write the new line to the file. And we've got another one as well. Seems a little bit unnecessary, but hey, we'll follow what it says. That's in the wrong place then, so that goes there. There we go. And then we need to close the file. That looks like this one. And then what have we got here? Index equals index plus 1. So that must go in the while loop. So it doesn't say exactly where that should go, but presumably it needs to go inside the loop. And what's this all about? If index is less than the length of browser table, well, I guess it should only increase it if, there we go, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Will it work? Did it work? Browser output? Yes, it did. That's rather exciting. So the trick here is read through the comments, scan through for what's most relevant, Control X to cut, Control V to paste, and test it as you go. Okay, so make sure that you save your Word document, please, and get it uploaded to Half Term 5, Algorithms and Programming 5. Make sure you save before you submit.